Hey piano people, welcome to Piano Talk. This is episode 2 of the monthly Q&A style video that is raw and unedited, just as though you were sitting with me here in my studio in a lesson. These are the videos where I answer all of your questions and give you the answers that I would give you if we were in a lesson. So you can submit your questions via the form in the description. I'll put the link in there. And like the piece you're working on, the composer, even the measure number can be very, very helpful if you have a specific question. And today's lineup in episode 2, we will be talking about practice routines, performance anxiety, and tempo. So if you don't know me, I'm Ashlee. Welcome to Ashlee on Music Studio. I have practiced over 20,000 hours and I have taught thousands of adult piano players from all over the world. And here on the YouTube channel, I teach you how to practice smarter, not harder. All right, so let's dive in. We have 3 questions. Our first question is from Mary, and her question says, I'm not able to practice for several days in a row. What's the best way to get back in the groove? And for this question, I have a couple of thoughts. But the first thing that I want to say, and this goes for everybody, not just for Mary, who maybe can't practice every day in a row, but the more organized and structured you are with your practice, the easier it's going to be when you sit down at the piano to practice the next time. Okay, and what I mean by that is simply writing things down, right? Like getting a notebook and putting it on your piano and keeping track of what you did during your practice time and how it went. And the reason that this is so important is because it helps you when you sit down. You don't have to like try to remember, and you also don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? Let's say like today you're working on your piece and you were able to play the first couple of lines beautifully with no mistakes and it was going really well, but measure 27 was giving you a hard time, right? And you figured out that on measure 27, it was really like beats 2 and 3 of measure 27. If you were to just take 20 seconds and jot that down, like first 3 lines good, measure 27 needs some work, beats 2 and 3. When you sit down at the piano tomorrow or next week or even a month from now, you know that you can start on measure 27 and you can just dive right into that part that you know is giving you trouble. So tracking your practice and having this feedback loop is very, very, very helpful because you can be as effective and efficient as possible. Okay, so I'm not totally sure what Mary means by like get back in the groove, but that would be my suggestion for how to make your practice as effective and efficient if you have gaps between your practice or if not, right? It's just a good tip for everybody. Now, in addition to that, the other thing that I would have you do is plan out your practice. So if you're not able to practice for several days in a row, I would start with a map of like the week or the next couple of weeks and say, what days are you able to practice? And can you start to like take a look at those days and map out what you're going to do, what your goals are, and just like give yourself a little roadmap of what you're going to do. You don't have to stick to this like to a T, but you're doing the work before you have to sit down. I find that if we sit down at the piano and we have no idea what we're doing, there's a very large barrier to entry, and it actually uses a different part of our brain to try to figure out like what to practice. So do that at the beginning of the week, and that way when you do have your times to practice, you can just dive right in, okay? Now, I have one last thing to say on this and then we'll go on to the other question. So if by like get back in the groove, you mean like get motivated or get excited to practice if you have a break, one thing that I would say, and this can go for anybody too in their practice, is do something that you're really excited about in the first 5 or 10 minutes, right? Like give yourself 5 or 10 minutes to just play through old pieces or to listen to your piece or to just play through your piece, right? Like give yourself a few minutes to do something that you love, something that you are excited about. And that way, when you have those gaps in your practice that like when you come back to practice, you're going to be excited to dive in. You're going to be like, yes, I'm so excited to do this. Now, 2 tools that I have that are very helpful for practice routines. One would be the Done For You practice calculator. This is a calculator that I created where you type in like the time that you have to practice. So let's say you have like an hour each day. You type in the names of your pieces, you type in any supporting skills like, scales or theory, and then it will spit out like different time allocations for your routine. And then it also has spots on the calculator for you to choose like what milestone that you're working from the confidence roadmap, and what tempo you're doing, and notes you can write to yourself. So it's a really great tool if you want to be very, very effective and efficient with your practice. And then another tool that I have is the plug and play practice routine blueprints, and I'll put these both in the description. And that is basically just like a PDF that kind of shows you 6 different examples of practice routines that you could do depending on how much time you have and how many like supporting skills versus pieces you're doing. And there's some other really good tips in there too. So those would be tools that I would recommend to any of you who are wanting to be more effective and efficient with your practice routines. But then doing what I just said in this video, it's gonna be a game changer, especially if you've never done it before. All right, we're gonna go on to question 2. And this question is from Ruth. And Ruth says, how do you not lose all self-belief when you play in front of others, including your teacher? Ruth, this is such a great question. And I'm so glad that you asked it, because playing in front of other people is hard. It's really hard. And it brings up a lot of anxiety for people, a lot of nerves. And I will say, so I'm recording this video. I usually record all of my videos on Mondays. I'm recording this video on a Monday. And last week, I was just teaching a live class to a group of I think there were about maybe 12 or 15 of us in the room, in the Zoom room online. And, these are piano players from all over the world. And this topic of performance anxiety came up. And the reason that it came up is because someone played in class and they played in a way that didn't reflect how much work they did, right? And they were so frustrated by that. And they were like, this is not how it goes when I play by myself. When I'm by myself, it is smooth. I don't pause. I don't make mistakes. And when I'm in front of this group, all of a sudden, everything falls apart. And to your point, Ruth, it's really difficult not to lose all self-belief when that happens, because you have such opposite experiences, right? When you're by yourself versus when you're in front of others. And so I have so many thoughts on this, but the first thing I want to say is that it's very normal. It's very, very, very normal. If you think about the fact that when you are in front of someone playing the piano, first of all, you're sharing a big vulnerability, right? Because the piano, especially when you're playing solo piano stuff, you're practicing by yourself a lot. And you're practicing and you're connecting with a deeper part of yourself, how are you going to emotionally express this piece? And not to mention just all of the actual work you've put in, the hours and hours of hard work that you've put in. So it's very natural that when we get in front of people, we want to showcase that. We want to be able to emotionally express ourselves. We want all of that hard work that we put in to shine through. And sometimes that's not the case because our nerves get the best of us, and that's very normal. Usually when we are playing, when we're performing for people or when we're playing in front of people, or even just honestly recording ourselves, it triggers your fight or flight response. And if you kind of think about biologically what's happening, we want to belong to a community. And in fact, it's necessary for our survival to belong to a community. And so a lot of how we show up in the world in our daily lives is trying to belong, trying to connect with people, trying to find our similarities, trying to ensure people like us, right? And when you get up in front of a group or in front of one person or even in front of your video camera and you expose yourself like that, it's very vulnerable. And there's a chance that people could not like it, right? And so that's kind of actually what triggers that fight or flight response. Whether you consciously know that or not, that's human nature and it's what happens. And so, 1, it's normal. 2, there are actually concrete ways that you can practice to overcome it. And so this is the second thing that I want to say, and then I'll give you an idea for a resource too. So when we are practicing, there's a delineation between 2 types of practice that will help you with performing. So when you are practicing to get your piece better, you are making note of every time you make a mistake. You are going back, you are fixing those mistakes, you are drilling, you are trying to achieve the highest level of accuracy as possible. When you are performing, you are ideally not tracking your mistakes, and you actually have to turn off that part of your brain that cares about the mistakes. You have to let the mistakes go. You have to keep playing all the way to the end. And that is something that you need to practice because it's so different from the other type of practice, right? And so I would recommend for all of you that in your practice sessions, take a few minutes at the end and just practice performing, quote unquote. And even if your performances are just for yourself, you're going to practice turning off the part of your brain that's critical, turning off the part of your brain that cares about the mistakes, and your only goal is to play beginning to end as musically as possible, because that's what you're ideally trying to do in a performance. And if you're never doing that by yourself, of course you can't do it in a performance. okay? And then the last thing I want to leave you with here is we can't always control everything that happens. There will never be perfection in a performance. It's not going to happen. And you can't control the way you feel, right? Like sometimes we're going to be really anxious. Sometimes we're going to be really disappointed in ourselves. And we can't really make those feelings go away. But what you can do is you can control the things you tell yourself, your thoughts. And so don't lose self-belief, because it's normal and it happens, and you choose what you tell yourself. So if you have a terrible performance, instead of thinking like, oh my God, that was awful, I shouldn't do this, who am I to be playing the piano, it's too late for me, blah, 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 like that whole negative self-talk thing, don't go there. Get curious. What happened? Why did it go wrong? What can I be proud of myself for? And when you ask yourself those questions, it kind of keeps you open to learning, and you just use it as an experiment for the next time, right? Once you get rid of this idea that there will ever be a perfect performance, the goal can change. Make your performance, make the goal to get one thing right. Make the goal to perform for your teacher with the correct rhythm, or whatever it is that your teacher assigned you the last week. Make that the goal of the performance, okay? And then talk to yourself kindly. Speak to yourself kindly, because that's the only thing you can do. Channel your favorite teacher and say the types of things to yourself that they would say to you, so that you can keep going, because music should be fun, right? Especially if you are like a hobby player or someone that's playing for fun. Like, don't make it terrible for yourself. Make it fun. Encourage yourself. Be your own cheerleader. Okay. Now there are also a lot of things you can do, like creating a pre-performance routine, right? Experimenting with things like power poses or meditation, or lots and lots and lots of ways that you can actually like practice the art of performing to deal with performance anxiety. And I have an entire course that I put together. I'm going to link that in the description below. It's called 30X in 30 days. You don't have to complete it in 30 days. You get lifetime access, so you can complete it like however much you want, and you can always go back to it over and over and over again, because every time you do, you'll get something different out of it. And it used to be a course that we sold for like hundreds of dollars. It is, I believe right now it's only $20. It's like around $20. So it's very, very, very affordable. I'll link that in the description below. And that would be a really great resource for those of you that are wanting to take performance anxiety and work on it over time, and really have a better relationship with performance anxiety and have it affect you less. All right, third question from Dudley. And this question says, I've been playing the piano for about 4 years and can play some fairly complex pieces. That's great. But whenever I take online lessons that require me to play pieces at a particular speed, the second I hit play, I feel out of control. As soon as I make a mistake, it is all downhill from there. I know it is similar to performance anxiety, but how can I overcome this issue? Okay, so this is such a great question. Such a great question. And to me, this question has a lot to do with tempo, right? Because you're saying that the speed is really what's making a difference. And I'm glad that you noticed that, because trying to play fast or trying to play up to tempo is one of the biggest mistakes that people make. And it's something that people do way too soon and way too early in the process. And one of the analogies that I recently used is that it's like trying to frost cake batter when you're baking a cake, right? It's like you're trying to like skip ahead to the last step before the cake is even baked, and it's not going to work. And so there's several different things that could be going on here, Dudley. And if I could like hear you play or have a little more details, I could give you like the exact answer. But because I have a more general question, I'm going to answer it from a little bit more of a zoomed out perspective, and I'll give you guys some like really great ideas, and then you can handpick based off of where you are. So the first thing I want you to know is that like you might just not be ready to play it at that speed, and that's okay. Getting something up to tempo takes time. And tempo is something that I recommend working on like last. And so for those of you that have the confidence roadmap or are familiar, this is like the way that I teach people how to learn pieces from the ground up with confident musical expression. And part of the reason that it works is because it outlines 10 milestones that you have to hit on your journey. And it kind of essentially gives you the order to go in. And the reason it's a very specific order, and it's an order you should follow. And the reason is because if you follow the order that I give you in the roadmap, you don't have things that you have to go back and fix. You don't have holes in your learning, right? Like you're ensuring that everything, you have that solid foundation so that the tempo naturally comes. And the thing that I always say about this is that tempo is the byproduct of consistent accuracy. And tempo means speed. So when you want to get a piece like up to tempo or play it, as fast as it's supposed to go, that speed is the byproduct of consistent accuracy. And if you really think about that, what that means is that in your practice, you have to prioritize consistent accuracy, not tempo. Okay? And so for this question, I guess I would ask you all to reframe it and to say, stop making the goal to play fast. Because if your goal is to play fast, you're going to cut corners, you're going to ignore mistakes, and your playing is likely to get worse and worse and worse. And you're going to have a lot of things you have to go back and fix before you can ever play up to tempo. But if you focus on accuracy, if you focus on being consistent with your fingering, writing in your fingering, making sure you're doing the rhythm correctly. These are the first milestones in the roadmap. Making sure your notes are very accurate, and you're doing all of this at a very, very slow tempo so that your brain can process and so that your brain can focus on accuracy. And when you do that, you learn and you build this solid foundation. And as you progress through the roadmap, the tempo or the speed naturally comes. And tempo is the 9th milestone in the confidence roadmap. And I find that when people learn this way, they don't have to try to play up to tempo, because naturally the speed comes as a byproduct of their really, really, really solid and accurate practice. Okay? Now, there are then, of course, things that you can do to get things up to tempo, like starting at half tempo and inching things up like 2 BPMs and 2 BPMs and 2 BPMs and things like that. But those suggestions I would really only give to you after you've learned in a way that prioritizes accuracy. And then, Dudley, I'm so glad you mentioned performance anxiety, because that's part of it too, is like being able to turn off the part of your brain that gets flustered, because sometimes when we hear a fast tempo, it's like, oh my gosh, that's just so fast. How do I do it? Right? And the more solid your practice is, the more you've focused at accuracy, the more you focused on accuracy, the more you build that confidence, and the more that when you hear those fast tempos, it doesn't sound like a big deal anymore. Okay? So I hope that answers your question. I recently created a tempo course actually that shows you exactly how to get pieces up to tempo. We also dive into like a lot more of what I just talked about with the roadmap and like what the actual goals of practice should be and the common mistakes that people make with tempo. We talk about how to choose a tempo. I show you and exactly how to practice like accelerandos and ritardandos, so like speeding up and slowing down and rubato and all of that. Basically anything that you could talk about when it comes to tempo, that course covers. And so I will link that in the description as well. For those of you that want to be able to get pieces up to tempo without falling apart. Okay. Okay. And then for the future, submit your questions below this video. And then I recently released a video that's all about one practice method and how it can help you learn your pieces really fast before you even put your hands on the keys. And so I'm going to link to that video right here. Thank you so much for being here, everybody. Happy practicing.